Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. My dad will be so grateful. See you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.
Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional, using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Coelho, and I'm so glad you're here. Each episode of the Mindful Fire podcast explores these 3 tools through teachings, guided meditations, and inspiring interviews with people actually living them to craft a life they love. At its core, Mindful Fire is about creating more awareness and choice in your life. Mindfulness helps you develop self-awareness to know yourself better and what's most important to you by practicing a kind, curious awareness. Envisioning is all about choosing to think big about your life and putting the power of your predicting brain to work to create the life you dream of. And financial independence brings awareness and choice to your financial life, empowering you to make your vision a reality by getting your money sorted out and ultimately making work optional. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to live out your vision. Mindful Fire is about using these tools to craft that life now on the path to financial independence and beyond. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. I'm your host, Adam Coelho, and I'm so glad you're here. On today's episode, I've got a real treat for you. I'm joined by my new friend, Joel Bein, and we're going to be talking about all things around limiting beliefs. Most of us, maybe all of us, have these beliefs that we have practiced over years, stories that we tell ourselves about how we are and how the world is. And sometimes those beliefs can limit us or get in our way of creating the life we want. And so Joel has been studying this for a long time and is here to help us explore our own limiting beliefs. And so let's dive into today's episode. Joel, welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks, Adam. My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this idea of limiting beliefs with you today. Something I've thought about for a while that I've made some progress on. Mindfulness has been hugely helpful for me to become aware of my limiting beliefs, but they persist, right? They are the stories that I've practiced for many, many years. But first, I would love to have you start by sharing with the audience a little bit about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about one story, there's always different ways you can frame it and different elements to highlight. I think I would love to just start by saying I'm very curious and I'm very interested in personal growth and supporting people in coming alive. I like to say I help people come alive. That's what makes me come alive. It's been a journey of personal development for the past 15 years or so, and just always asking questions, essentially. And a lot of those questions have come as well from a philosophical standpoint of, okay, what's the root cause of obstacles and mindset blocks and so forth? And a lot of that, I ask, okay, what happened growing up? What happened with our parents? What happened with our teachers? What happened in messages we absorb from culture? That's always been interesting to me, trying to get to the root so we can, as individuals, we can solve problems and we can flourish and come alive. As a society and culture, how can we create new paradigms that are healthier and people are flourishing at large? So I've always been interested in education and actually got a degree in education originally, music education. My first passion is classical music, and that's a whole other element of my story. But also education has been this passion of mine. And I originally was actually working in the K through 12 system for several years, but I always was asking a lot of questions that about what the system was doing and what the sort of the mindsets that were being instilled. I became very interested in creating new paradigms in education. And that sort of led me to working for this entrepreneur named Isaac Morehouse. And he founded a company called Praxis, which is an apprenticeship program for young people to launch careers without college. And it's all about a mindset shift, value creation mindset, learning to pitch yourself, build portfolios, build skills. And that ended up spinning off into a new company that eventually became Career Hackers, which is one of my projects, basically helping to empower people to forge their career path and come alive in their lives and career by that self-empowerment, by that curiosity, that creativity, that value creation mindset, and sharing that with as many people as possible in the world so people can learn that they don't need to wait for permission to go do what they want to do with their lives, which we might get into that a little bit today. So at the end of the day, what fires me up is, again, supporting people in coming alive, and that starts between the ears. If we can get to the root and let go of the stories that we maybe absorbed growing up, and by the way, it's not even a matter of pointing fingers at anybody. It's a matter of just being honest. Oh, I learned to create this story in my mind through this experience or these experiences growing up. And now can I, as an empowered adult, go back and begin to let go? And when we do that, then you really step into that true self and that authentic self and that empowered self and that creative self and that alive self to go do what you want with this one gift you have of life. So yeah, that's kind of the big picture.
Very cool. The idea of what brings you alive is something that is really important. Thank you for sharing that, Joel. I really love this question of what brings you alive, right? When I help people envision a future that they want to create for themselves, I help them craft a life they love. That question is front and center, right? When are you alive? When are you in flow? When are you just absorbed in what you're doing? And that is such an important question. And with everything that life throws our way, it's easy to forget about that and just go through the motions. You've focused a lot on helping people use their career to a life that brings them alive. And I personally know that a lot of people in general, but also specifically in the fire space, want to achieve financial independence so that they can escape their job. They can escape having to work for others. And so that, kind of put another way, is that job is limiting them from living the life that they want to be living. As I was saying before we started recording, I'm coming off a day yesterday where I was in this mood where I was just like, get me out of here. Like, it was a combination of overwhelmed and dreading a potential conversation I was having with my boss about my performance review, which turned out to be fine. But it's these stories, right? Like I always say that our stories create our reality. And I had, a story going yesterday. It was quite a tale that I was telling myself. And I was just in this bad mood and I was letting it affect how I was showing up. And I was just really in this idea that like, man, this job is keeping me from having the space to really pursue entrepreneurship how I want to do it. And this has come up again and again for me. So I don't think I'm the only one that sees work as an obstacle or maybe an impediment to living that life, being fully alive. So I said a lot of stuff. It's not really a question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'm sure you've come across people that have this type of belief.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that's a cluster of beliefs. There's a whole system of roots potentially that contribute to that overall pattern of sort of feeling stuck in that job and having that relationship to work and so forth. So there's lots of different, I would say, core beliefs that we could, if I were working with someone on that specifically, would want to uncover. At a broad level, I think a lot of it comes down to what I said earlier about permission-based mindset. We believe that we need to wait for permission to go create what we want to create. And that somehow the employer, the company, has some sort of power over us is a lot of these frames, I think, of seeing the company as the authority figure, even at just like a dim subconscious level. So we end up saying things to ourselves like, I have to go to work, right? So if you talk about mindfulness, if we become mindful of the phrase, I have to, that can be a great first step, because the reality is you don't have to do anything. That you actually you have your own mind and your own body, and you are empowered to choose every single choice that you make. The question is, what are the costs and the benefits? What's the cause and effect of those choices? So you might be choosing to go to work because you value the salary you get that provides you a home or mortgage payment or certain lifestyle or so and so forth. And so in order to continue that lifestyle, perhaps you need to keep bringing in this salary. So that's a little bit more clear way of thinking about it, right? And it's a little more empowered because you realize, well, I'm choosing this still. Even if you're in a job you hate, you're choosing it. Like when I was working in high school, I had a lot of parts of me that really hated that. But I did tell myself, I'm choosing this because I'm recognizing based on a myriad of factors that this is the best situation so that I have more free time on the side to go build something new. And that's what I did. I also recognized that I did have the power to end that situation. And it was a matter more of cost benefit analysis and seeing that freedom. So I kind of look at all this stuff there's two sides of the same coin. There's the overall mindset frames that we take at the conscious level by choosing to say, I'm going to let go of I have to and say I choose to, and recognize more clearly what's happening. And then there's the subconscious level, which is what I alluded to with core root beliefs. I mean, there could be core root beliefs like I'm not powerful enough. Could be a concept that's sort of wired into the subconscious mind. And that creates this friction. Or it could be, I'm not capable, or I'm not good enough, or I can't do it, or I'm not worthy of success. That's a big one I see with clients. And when we have these subconscious beliefs, that becomes one metaphor I use. It's like sandbag weights that are holding down the hot air balloon. Like we do have this desire and we're fired up the hot air balloon. We want to take off. But then we have these core limiting beliefs that are just holding down you from actually flying, actually taking off. So when you can excavate at the subconscious level and let go of those stories, then you start to also think more clearly and realize your own personal power, basically.
Got it. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there with the word choice, right? That's a great reframe. And like you said, it is true, right? Like it's not like you're just making up stuff, right? Like you are choosing every day to go to this job, whatever reason, right? You have a reason, right? Even if you don't have a reason, you're still choosing to do it. And it's interesting because the two things that when I think about the intersection between mindfulness and financial independence, it's two words, awareness and choice. And it turns out in this realm as well, right? With what we're talking about here, awareness is the first step. What is the story I'm telling myself? What is this limiting belief or this feeling I'm having? Like, let me first be aware of it and then realize like I'm actually choosing whatever I'm doing, right? I'm choosing it and I'm actually doing it because I'm choosing it. And I can choose something different, but it's up to me to do that. Nobody's forcing me to do anything.
It comes down to that choice. And it comes to limiting beliefs. I think we can also invite self-acceptance and compassion for the stories that we chose oftentimes growing up. And oftentimes we didn't have the capacity to really understand if we got in trouble because we got a C on our report card, that if an adult was upset with you, they got mad at you, for example. As a child, you might create from that tough experience, you might create some limiting beliefs like failure isn't safe or I'm not good enough. So as children, we don't necessarily have the capacity to recognize if an adult is upset with us, that's because of their own stuff or that's their own choice. And so as children, we're seeking to do our best to understand ourselves, understand our environments, and just make it through any situations, mild or severe, that happen to us that might birth some of these stories growing up. So there's also that opportunity for just self-forgiveness, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and just letting go of that extra layer of self-judgment about the fact that you have these stories. Like that's very common. I've experienced that where you have I'll experience a judger of the judgment. It's like, you're more, you know more about personal development than that, Joel. Why are you doing it like that? You know better. Like, why are you judging yourself? You need to be more self-compassionate. Or like, there could be these meta layers, and it's just zooming out and just getting back to that mindfulness acceptance. And then you can start to choose an empowered self-responsible approach to say, okay, what can I do? Now that I recognize and lovingly accept that I have these stories going on, that maybe they come from these earlier times in my life. Okay, now how can I take an empowered approach to letting go of that stuff?
It's funny. Yeah, you mentioned the judging the judgments, right? Like I very much have that. I think that's one of the most common things when people start meditating. They judge, they feel like they're doing it wrong, and then they start to judge that they're doing it wrong, and that I'm judging that they're not paying attention or whatever. And the thing that I always remind people is like, all of those are just thoughts, right? They may seem really important, but they're just thoughts. Just like, what am I going to have for lunch? You know, some thoughts in meditation are very clearly just like a distraction, but some thoughts feel very important and consequential, but they're just thoughts as well. And you can always just come back and kind of realize that. One thing I'd love to explore with you, maybe somebody's listening to this and they've heard the idea of limiting beliefs, or it's new to them potentially. How would you recommend somebody to bring awareness to what their limiting beliefs are?
Well, first I would emphasize that these limiting beliefs are parts of us. They're not our full self. I like to borrow the frame that internal family systems therapy provides, IFS therapy, which is worth looking up for people. But basically seeing our psyche as a system, a multiplicity of parts. And everyone kind of gets this. You know, part of me wants to go get Thai food, part of me wants to go get Mexican food. But when we actually look at that frame in a very sophisticated way, basically, and recognizing that we have parts of us that have different emotions, we have parts of us that have different beliefs. And oftentimes these are parts, again, from childhood or from earlier experiences in life, and it's not you. And so it's a subconscious thing. There's conscious and subconscious, essentially. You might consciously believe that you are worthy of success, or that it is possible for you to make $1 million. But what we're curious about with letting go of limiting beliefs is the subconscious part. So in my experience, working on myself with hundreds of beliefs and working with clients, until we actually connect to the part of you that originally formed the belief, it doesn't matter how much the conscious mind tries to override it, right? It's like if you have a stain on the carpet, it doesn't matter. If you spray air freshener, that's not going to solve the problem. So if you actually get to the root and solve the problem, then you can free yourself. These things are in the subconscious mind, and basically they're these programs that, to choose another metaphor, it's like if your mind is an operating system, these limiting beliefs are these programs that are always open, and they're taking up mental RAM. The best benefits of the work that I do that I've seen for myself, just speaking for myself, is like letting go of the belief creates space. It creates freedom in your mind. One way to put it is it disarms the inner critic. Like the inner critic begins to have less ammo if you let go and you clear at the root level, working with the part that has the belief, letting go of I'm not good enough, letting go of I can't do it, letting go of making money has to be hard. When we let go of these at the root level, then we create that newfound space and freedom. And you can choose a new story if you want. You can choose to insert a new story, but in my experience, when we actually connect to the root and have a dialogue with this part to recognize that it created this story and it actually isn't objectively true, when we connect with the part, then we actually let go at the root and we're free. Then there's just this space, serenity, freedom, clarity, because this program is no longer on the operating system automatically. You might need it in some situations, maybe for the belief like making money is hard. Maybe it's true sometimes. Maybe it's true if you're starting a business and your niche is just completely off, like there's a complete mismatch, and you're just working as hard, like you keep working and you don't change your approach. Making money is hard, maybe in that situation. But so there could be some value in the concept, but what we get when we let go of the automatic program, we have discernment and freedom. We get new discernment and freedom so that the belief is just not constantly running. So no matter what you say with your conscious mind, your inner critic is telling you that it has to be hard or that you're not worthy of success. When we let go of this belief that this is an automatic, absolute truth statement about life and about you, that's when you create the discernment and the freedom. So that's kind of an overview. I can go in different directions from there, but.
Got it. But I'm curious, like, if somebody's not even aware of what the belief is, right? Like,
right. I didn't answer your question fully.
Yeah, it's okay. Like I think it's interesting that you got to go to where it is in the subconscious. But yeah, like how do you even identify it? For me, it was like I was totally unaware of these limiting beliefs until I started meditating and I started practicing that kind, curious awareness of mindfulness.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I did that I actually was like, oh wait, like actually I'm really like not very kind to myself. This inner critic is going all the time, and it's you're not good enough, you're doing it wrong, all these things constantly.
Yeah. So to fully answer your question, the way that I invite people to become aware of the belief is to tune in to the body and to notice a particular pattern. So perhaps maybe it's a pattern around resistance to doing creative work. You want to write this blog post, or you want to start a business, or you want to write a novel, and you procrastinate, right? So that's the sort of higher level pattern. But then we ask, what is procrastination? Well, it's when X happens, Y happens. When I think about starting to write the novel, I feel resistance. So you feel some yucky feeling in your body. You feel resistance, you feel anxiety, you feel fear, you feel worry, you feel tension in your body. And so then you don't go do the thing, you go scroll Instagram. So that's the pattern that you can begin to recognize, okay, I'm having this block. But to start to zoom in, it's becoming aware of the body. And then I would say, what I like to ask people is, what if that sensation in your body could speak, what would it say? Now we're starting to have a dialogue with a part of you, or parts of you that have a multiplicity of different beliefs, or we're starting to get curious. Basically, another way to look at it is when you notice a pattern for yourself, ask yourself, what would I have to believe for this pattern to be happening? When you notice that you feel fear when you look at your bank account, ask yourself, what would I have to believe in order for this fear to be here? Because I would assert that if you feel fear when you look at your bank account, that no matter what the number is or the situation, the fear is 90% plus because of past experience in life, not because of the present external circumstances. So if we can turn inward and say, what would I have to believe in order for this fear to be here? Or what is this resistance to doing creative work? What does this feeling have to say? And then we can start to get curious and dialogue with those parts of ourselves. And then those parts might start to give us the data that gives us the actual belief. It's like, well, I'm afraid if I publish this this novel that people will make fun of me. That could be one trailhead to get more, or there could just be beliefs. It's just really hard to write. It's really hard to build something, build a business. It's really hard. I don't want to do hard things. There's need for comfort, right? Need for ease. So we can be compassionate as well, that the feeling is trying to get a need met. But yeah, when we start to give voice to the feelings in our body, then we can connect with the subconscious and see and learn more about what the beliefs are. And there's usually a whole cluster around, if there's a certain pattern like procrastination or imposter syndrome, then we can start to excavate, like I said, and find different beliefs that are all creating that resistance.
It sounds like resistance is the real trailhead, as you kind of said. Like when you start feeling resistance, you start procrastinating on things, like that's a time to get curious and start looking a little bit more closely and asking, where do I feel this in my body, and what might this resistance or this feeling say if I asked it? What must I believe
Right.
that's causing this?
Yeah. And then you can even just start asking yourself, like, you can ask the feeling in your body, but also just test out different beliefs. Like, do I just believe that starting a business is hard? Okay. Ask yourself that. People could right now just tune in with their bodies. Is there a sense that business is hard or starting a business is hard? And then the way to check to see if you believe that subconsciously is just to, again, tune into your body. Is there a kind of a heaviness? Is there a weight when you say that to yourself? Or does it not sound, does it sound empty? Does it sound silly? Does it sound, if I said birds never fly, you wouldn't feel a weight in your body, right?
Right.
But if I say business has to be hard, starting a business has to be hard, then
it doesn't feel too heavy to me.
That's just an example. Or it could be, I'm not worthy of success. There's beliefs about self-worth. There's beliefs about business and work ethic and money, and there's beliefs about relationships, and there's all sorts of different reasons we might have that pattern. But yeah, if you can start to sort of sense test and test these different concepts out, these potential beliefs, and then tune in again to your body to see if that particular belief is true. And everyone's going to be different.
So let's shift gears now into what I call the Mindful Fire Final Four. You ready?
Yeah.
So the first question, Joel, is all about envisioning. I love hearing stories about how people use the power of their mind to create something in their life. And so I'd love to hear a story about how a time when you had a vision in your mind of something you wanted to create for yourself and how you went about making it happen.
Yeah, I love this. I guess one that pops to mind, and it alludes back to the beginning of the conversation when I mentioned I started working for an entrepreneur named Isaac Morehouse. And I basically made this big career change a few years back. I basically created a very strong, vivid vision to work for Isaac Morehouse in one way or another. And one tool I used, people might be familiar with the self-authoring program by Jordan Peterson, and the future authoring specifically, where you can write specific visions for yourself for your 3 to 5 year goals and get concrete about that. And so I wrote very much in detail about my desired future, my desired goals in that program. And one of those was to work for Isaac. I was just determined. I was very lit up about his mission and had a lot of positive feelings about his mission, his company, and just felt lit up about it. That driving fuel, it fueled my why, that sense of purpose to work for him. And I failed a few times. I pitched him on a couple opportunities and fell short a couple times and just kept on going because I had that definiteness of purpose. And eventually I broke through. I broke through on the 3rd or 4th try. And that was a huge shift in my life.
Very cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. And yeah, that's a great thing to point out. It's like, it doesn't always happen immediately, right? Just because you have the vision and you want it to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen in the timeline or the way that you hope. But if you don't have a vision, you're certainly not going to get there, right? So I love that example.
Absolutely.
All right. The second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
I think if they're early on their path, my first piece of advice would be recognize the 8th wonder of the world, which is the compounding effect. So recognizing the power of putting money aside and saving, investing, and so forth, so that you are truly taking care of your future self and empathizing with that future self. If you create those habits, that 1% a day type mindset of just a penny doubled every day for 30 days is $5 million. And the most of that growth happens in the last few days. So the point is that when you take those small steps at the beginning, that has a huge impact on your future. And then, just being aware of money beliefs. Do you have beliefs in your subconscious mind that abundance isn't for you, or I don't have enough money, or I'll never have enough money? Thinking about what beliefs you learned growing up. For me, I grew up with parents that didn't make a lot of money, weren't entrepreneurial, had a lot of scarcity. So I absorbed a lot of their beliefs, right? So it's been a process for me to let go of those stories. So that's a huge part.
Great advice. All right. The third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
Just start, and 1 minute of meditation a day is way better than 0 minutes. And oftentimes the resistance is just a matter of starting. So if you start with 1 minute a day, it almost sounds ludicrous to do 1 minute, but I've literally done that before. I set a timer for 1 minute. Usually I've done 5-6 minutes a day for about a decade now. That's a huge impact on my life. If you just start with small, then you'll start to build a habit, the micro habit. And then maybe you'll decide, I actually want to go for 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But it's the mechanism of starting has a lot of power.
Absolutely. All right, Joel, the last question is, how can people connect with you online, learn more about what you're working on, and reach out if they want to learn about working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have 2 businesses active right now. One, the limiting belief work is called Human Liberation. I actually created a special page for people in the Mindful Fire community. So you can go to thehumanliberation.co/fire, and you can learn more about what I do at that website, but also as I sort of begin this business and getting the word out about what I'm doing with helping people with their limiting beliefs. I'm wanting to just share this generously. I'm giving away complimentary sessions. So if you just want to try this out, no pressure to become a client. But if it's something that piques your interest and it's something that you potentially want to do to work on yourself, check out that website. And then, I have 2 podcasts. One that's been active for a while, the Daily Job Hunt podcast by career hackers. And then I'm just starting. It's planning to be released October 4th. My newest podcast is just the Joel Bein Show. So if you're like me and you're a podcast zealot, then feel free to find me there. And joelbein.com is my website. You can find my email address there if you want to connect. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Always love to hear from people, especially in podcasts, who are listening on podcasts. And I'm very, very much open to receiving messages from people and just connecting. So thank you so much, Adam, for the chance to come on the show and share my thoughts, and appreciate you really much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. So reach out to Joel, check out his resources that he's put together. Yeah, thanks again for being here, Joel.
My pleasure. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.